The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Ji-won walked inside, her boots clicking against the polished floor. The room was enormous, much bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above that she could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air, glowing in colors that humans had no names for. Around the circular chamber sat representatives from 12 different alien species. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that pulsed with inner light. A few were clouds of gas held together by force fields, speaking through electronic translators. All of them watched Ji-won as she walked to the center of the room. Behind her, Admiral Tae-hyun followed at a steady pace. He was older than Ji-won, with gray hair and a face marked by years of military service. He had fought in the Mars defense campaigns when hostile forces tried to take humanity's first colony. That war had taught Earth many hard lessons about survival in space. Ji-won stopped at the designated spot and looked around. The council members sat in elevated seats that formed a ring around her. She felt like a student being examined by teachers, except these teachers could decide the fate of her entire species. A crystalline being floated down from its seat. Its body was transparent, filled with lights that moved like thoughts you could see. This was Vecthar, the evaluator. His species was old, so old that they had been traveling between stars when humans still lived in caves. Captain Ji-won of Earth. Vekthar's voice came from everywhere at once, translated into her language by technology she did not understand. You stand before this council to undergo the final assessment. Your species has requested membership in the galactic community. Before we can grant this, we must evaluate your military capabilities. Ji-won nodded.
She had prepared for this moment for months.
Earth's leaders had explained what was at stake. If humanity passed this test, they would gain access to advanced technology, trade routes, and protection under galactic law. If they failed, Earth would remain isolated, vulnerable to any hostile force that wanted to take their worlds. The test is simple, Vecthar continued. The air in the center of the chamber shimmered, and a holographic display appeared. It showed a solar system with several planets. This is a colony scenario. Your forces must defend this world against an attacking fleet. The enemy will outnumber you significantly. You must demonstrate tactical thinking, resource management, and adherence to Council military protocols. Admiral Tae-hyun stepped forward. What exactly are the parameters? Another council member spoke up. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of metal. You will have 30 ships. Standard council designs. The enemy will have 240 automated drones. The colony has 50,000 civilians that must be protected. Any civilian casualties will result in immediate failure. Ji-won studied the holographic display. The colony world was in a difficult position, far from any reinforcements. The attacking drones were using a classic swarm pattern. She had studied this scenario in the academy. It was designed to be almost impossible to win using standard defensive tactics. The test will be conducted through neural simulation, Vecthar explained. We will connect your minds to our computers. You will experience the battle as if it were real, but it will happen much faster. Months of warfare will pass in just a few hours of real time. This technology allows us to safely evaluate your capabilities without risking actual lives or resources. Ji-won glanced at Tae-hyun. The Admiral's face showed no emotion, but she knew him well enough to read his thoughts. They had discussed this moment many times during the journey to the Council homeworld. The simulation is completely accurate, another council member added. This one was reptilian, with scales that changed color as it spoke. It uses real physics, real weapon capabilities, real everything. The only difference is that it happens inside a computer, instead of actual space. Every species that has ever applied for council membership has taken this test. Most fail on their first attempt. Vekthar's crystalline form pulsed with light. We have evaluated over 300 species using this method. It is the safest and most efficient way to assess military competence. Now, Captain Ji-won, we must ask you the standard question before we begin. The evaluator floated closer. All around the chamber, the council members leaned forward in their seats. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Do you want us to run the test live, or would you prefer to just see the debrief after the simulation is complete? Vecthar asked. Most species choose to see only the debrief. It is less stressful and the results are identical either way. Ji-won felt her heartbeat quicken. This was the moment. Everything they had planned depended on what she said next. She looked at Taehyun one more time. The Admiral gave her the smallest nod, barely visible. She turned back to face Vekthar. "I choose to run it live." The chamber fell completely silent. The council members stopped moving. Even the ones that were made of gas seemed to freeze in place. Vekthar's lights flickered in a pattern that Ji-won's translator could not interpret. "I am sorry," Vekthar said slowly. Perhaps the translation was unclear. "I asked if you wanted to run the test live or see the debrief. Running it live means—" "I know what it means," Ji-won interrupted, keeping her voice steady and calm. "I choose to run it live." More silence. Then the chamber erupted in noise. Council members spoke to each other in dozens of different languages. The translators in Ji-won's ear struggled to keep up with all the different conversations happening at once. A council member that looked like a bear made of stone stood up. "This is highly irregular. No species has ever chosen the live option." "The live option means using real ships," another shouted. "Real resources, real risk. If you fail, those ships are actually destroyed." Vekthar held up what might have been a hand, and the chamber quieted down. "Captain Ji-won, I must ensure you understand. If you choose the live option, Earth must deploy actual military vessels to the designated coordinates. The enemy fleet is real. The colony is real. If your ships are destroyed, they are truly gone. If any of your crew members die, they are truly dead. The simulation option exists precisely to avoid these risks." Ji-won smiled. It was a small smile, but several council members shifted uncomfortably when they saw it. There was something in that expression that they did not like, something that reminded them of predators from their own homeworlds. "I understand perfectly," Ji-won said. "Earth chooses to run this test live. We will use real ships, real crews, and real tactics. If there is any doubt about humanity's capabilities, we want to eliminate that doubt completely." Taehyun stepped up beside her. "The rules state that species may choose either option. We choose live deployment. Please provide us with the coordinates and we will begin immediately." Vekthar's lights pulsed rapidly, a sign of distress in his species. "Very well, but I must warn you, no species has ever made this choice before. You are gambling with lives and resources for no additional benefit. The simulation is perfect in every way." "Then there should be no difference in the outcome," Ji-won replied, "except that everyone here will know, with absolute certainty, that humanity's performance was real." The council members looked at each other. Some seemed impressed, others seemed disturbed. All of them were intensely curious about what would happen next. A human species had just done something unprecedented, and somehow that felt entirely appropriate. Commander Hyun-woo sat at the observation deck, his fingers moving across holographic controls that floated in the air before him. The controls were a mix of human and alien technology, interfaces that Earth's engineers had spent years learning to use. Around him, council technicians watched with expressions that ranged from shock to fascination. "Establishing connection to Earth Command," Hyun-woo said calmly, as if he were ordering lunch instead of mobilizing a military fleet. His hands moved through the light displays with practiced ease. "Authentication codes confirmed. Encryption protocols active." On the main viewing screen, a face appeared. Admiral Park, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, looked out from his office on the moon. Behind him, through the window, Earth hung in space like a blue and white marble. "Commander, we received your authorization request," Admiral Park said. "Confirm orders, deploy Battle Group 7 to designated coordinates for live council evaluation." "Confirmed, sir," Hyun-woo replied. "Captain Ji-won has selected live deployment option. All safety protocols are waived. This is a real engagement." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "Understood. Battle Group 7 is already prepared. They've been on standby since you left for the council homeworld. Commander Jae-min reports all systems ready." In the council chamber below, Ji-won watched as multiple screens lit up around the room. Each screen showed a different view of space near a distant colony world. The colony itself was visible on the largest screen, a blue-green planet with 2 small moons. Lieutenant Minna worked at another console, her young face serious with concentration. She was the youngest person in the human delegation, barely 25 years old, but she had graduated top of her class in communications and tactical coordination. "Receiving telemetry now," Minna announced. "Battle Group 7 is coming through the jump gate. First ships emerging in 3, 2, 1. Space on the viewing screens rippled like water. Then ships began to appear, sliding into normal space from the faster-than-light jump corridor. They were beautiful in their way, all angles and armor, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. The first ship to fully materialize was the UNSS Indomitable, a heavy cruiser that served as the battle group's flagship. Its hull was painted dark gray with Earth's blue and white emblem on the side. Along its length, weapon ports were already opening and shield generators were powering up. More ships followed. Destroyers, frigates, support vessels, each one jumping into formation with military precision. The council members watched in silence as humanity's fleet assembled before their eyes. 30 ships confirmed in position, Minna reported. All systems showing green. Commander Jamin requests permission to assume tactical command. Permission granted, G1 said. Tell him the council is watching. Make it good. One of the council members, a being that looked like a collection of floating rocks held together by magnetic fields, spoke up. This is madness. You are risking actual military assets for an evaluation that could be safely conducted in simulation. Admiral Tae-hyun turned to face the speaker. His military bearing made him seem taller than he was. With respect, council member, this is precisely why we chose this option. A simulation shows what we might do. A live deployment shows what we will do. But the cost, another council member protested. This one was insectoid, with multiple arms that gestured frantically. Each of those ships represents enormous resources. If they are destroyed, your species loses years of industrial output. Yes, Tae-hyun agreed simply. That is what makes this test real. In actual warfare, there are always stakes. Commanders must make decisions knowing that mistakes cost lives and resources. A simulation removes those consequences. We want you to see how humans perform when the stakes are genuine. Vekthar's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. I must attempt one more time to change your mind. No species has ever done this. There is a reason for that. The simulation technology is perfect. It accurately models every aspect of warfare. You gain nothing from this risk. Ji-won shook her head. We gain something important. We gain your absolute confidence in our abilities. When this is over, there will be no doubt, no questions, no wondering if humans might have performed differently under real pressure. You will know exactly what we can do. And what if you fail? Asked the jellyfish-like council member. What if your ships are destroyed and your people die? For an evaluation? Then we fail, Ji-won said flatly. And Earth will know that we were not ready for council membership. Better to learn that now in a controlled situation than later when the stakes are even higher. On the viewing screens, more activity appeared. From the other side of the colony world, red markers began to appear on the tactical displays. These were the enemy drones, the automated ships that the council had prepared for the test. Enemy contact, Minna announced, showing 240 autonomous combat drones. They are beginning their attack approach. Estimated time to engagement range, 15 minutes. The drones moved in a swarm pattern, hundreds of small ships that operated with perfect coordination. Each drone was small compared to human vessels, but they were fast and carried powerful weapons. Against them, humanity's 30 ships seemed badly outnumbered. Jamin is deploying his forces, Hyunwoo reported, reading data from his console. He is spreading the ships out in a wide formation. That is not standard council defensive doctrine. One of the council military observers leaned forward. He should be forming a defensive shell around the colony. That is the correct response to a numerical disadvantage. Why is he dispersing his forces? Admiral Tae-hyun smiled slightly. Because Commander Jamin is not following council doctrine. He is following human doctrine. But you must use council standard procedures, the observer objected. That is part of the test. We need to evaluate how well you can integrate with our existing military structures. The test parameters said we must defend the colony and protect the civilians, Ji-won pointed out. They did not specify what tactics we must use. We will defend the colony our way. The council members exchanged looks. Several of them seemed disturbed by this. In thousands of years of galactic civilization, everyone followed the established military protocols. Those protocols had been developed over centuries, tested in countless battles, refined to mathematical perfection. The idea of ignoring them seemed almost insulting. On the screen, the enemy drones continued their approach. They moved in perfect geometric patterns, like a school of fish in Earth's oceans, each one maintaining precise distance from its neighbors. It was beautiful in a way, this mathematical precision. The human ships looked chaotic by comparison. They seemed to be moving randomly, each ship going in a different direction. There was no obvious pattern, no clear defensive strategy. To the council observers, it looked like panic. "Captain G1," Vekthar said carefully. "Your commander appears to be losing formation cohesion. Perhaps you should advise him to regroup." "Commander Jamin knows what he is doing," G1 replied without taking her eyes off the screens. "Just watch." The distance closed. 10 minutes to contact. 5 minutes. The drones began to accelerate, moving faster as they prepared to strike. Their weapons were charging, visible on the tactical display as building energy signatures. The human ships continued their seemingly random movements. They were spreading out even more, creating gaps in their formation that the drones could easily exploit. Several council members were shaking their heads, convinced they were about to witness a disaster. 2 minutes to weapons range, Minna said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Jamin is holding fire. All human ships report ready status." "He is waiting too long," an alien admiral muttered. "He should be firing at maximum range to thin out the drone swarm before they close." "Different species, different tactics," Tae-hyun said quietly. "You will understand in a moment. 1 minute." The drones were now visible on the visual displays, tiny points of light against the black of space. They were moving at incredible speed, ready to tear through the human formation and attack the colony beyond. 30 seconds. "All ships." Jamin's voice suddenly came through the communication system, calm and clear. "Execute pattern thunderstorm. Fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark." And then the human ships opened fire all at once. The space between the fleets lit up like a star going nova. The volume of fire was incredible, far more than the council observers had expected. Every human ship was firing at maximum rate, their weapons blazing continuously instead of the careful aimed shots that council doctrine preferred. "What are they doing?" someone shouted. "They are wasting ammunition. They cannot sustain that rate of fire." But the humans continued firing. Streams of energy and projectiles filled space, creating a wall of destruction that the drones had to fly through, and suddenly the pattern became clear. The human ships had not been moving randomly. They had been positioning themselves to create overlapping fields of fire, zones where every inch of space was covered by weapons from multiple angles. The drones, flying in their perfect geometric formation, flew directly into this trap. Explosions began to blossom throughout the enemy formation. Drones died by the dozen, then by the score, their simple AI unable to adapt to this volume of fire. They had been programmed to dodge and weave between carefully aimed shots. They had no response to a wall of continuous fur. The space around the colony world had become a storm of light and destruction. The council members sat in stunned silence as they watched humanity's ships tear through the enemy drone swarm with a ferocity none of them had expected. On the UNSS Indomitable, Commander Jamin stood on the bridge watching his tactical displays. He was a short man with sharp eyes and hands that moved constantly, adjusting controls and reviewing data. Around him, his crew worked with focused intensity. "Enemy formation breaking up," his tactical officer reported. "We have destroyed 87 drones. Remaining units are attempting to scatter." "Do not let them reform," Jamin ordered. "All ships pursue assigned targets. Do not let them reach minimum safe distance for regrouping." On another ship, the destroyer UNSS Defiant, Captain So-hyun was pushing her vessel to its limits. The Defiant was smaller than the Indomitable, but faster and more agile. It dove through the debris field left by destroyed drones, its weapons firing continuously. "Captain, we are exceeding recommended fire rate by 40%, her weapons officer warned. "The guns are overheating. Keep firing," So-hyun said. "Engineer Dong-hyun, how are those modifications holding up?" In the engineering section, deep in the ship's hull, Dong-hyun monitored his jury-rigged cooling systems. He had spent the entire journey from Earth to the Council homeworld designing modifications to the weapon systems. Standard Council weapons were designed to fire powerful shots with careful timing to prevent overheating. Dong-hyun had changed that. "Cooling systems operating at 110% of design specifications," he reported, wiping sweat from his forehead. The engineering bay was hot despite the extra coolant he had routed through the weapon systems. "We can maintain this rate for another 12 minutes before we need to cycle down." 12 minutes is all we need," So-hyun replied. She gripped her command chair as the Defiant rolled hard to avoid debris. "Helm, bring us around for another pass." Weapons, target that cluster of drones at coordinates 779er. Back in the council chamber, the alien observers were trying to understand what they were seeing. The tactical displays showed the battle from multiple angles, but the speed and chaos of the engagement made it difficult to follow. They modified their weapons, one council member said, disbelief clear in his translated voice.
They changed council standard designs.
The test parameters allowed for standard equipment, another objected. Modifications were not authorized. Admiral Tae-hyun did not look away from the screens as he responded. The parameters specified council standard designs as the baseline. They said nothing about modifications. Human engineers excel at improving existing technology. It is one of our greatest strengths, but the doctrine, a council military observer protested. Council doctrine requires careful aimed fire to conserve ammunition and prevent weapon damage from overheating. What your ships are doing will destroy their weapon systems. Possibly, Tae-hyun agreed, but it will destroy the enemy first. That is all that matters in combat. Humans do not worship doctrine. We use whatever works. On the tactical display, the battle continued to evolve. The drones that had survived the initial onslaught were trying to implement their programmed tactics. They began to split into smaller groups, attempting to attack from multiple directions at once. It was a sensible response against an enemy using traditional defensive tactics. But the humans were not using traditional tactics. Ensign Yoo-jin sat at the electronic warfare station aboard the Indomitable. She was young, younger even than Lieutenant Minna back on the Council homeworld. Her fingers danced across her controls as she worked. "Commander, I am detecting drone coordination signals," she reported. "They are using a distributed network to share targeting data. Can you disrupt it?" Jamin asked. Yoo-jin smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I can do better than disrupt it. Give me 30 seconds. She had been studying the drone signals since they first appeared. The drones used sophisticated encryption, but they had a weakness. They needed to communicate constantly to maintain their coordination. That communication created openings. Her fingers flew across the controls. Code that she had written during the journey from Earth activated, worming its way into the drone network. It was not a complicated hack. It did not need to be. It just needed to cause confusion. "Done," she announced. "I have introduced false targeting data into their network. The drones think half of their own fleet is actually enemy ships." On the viewing screens, the effect was immediate and devastating. The drones began firing on each other. The swarm that had been so perfectly coordinated moments ago dissolved into chaos as automated ships attacked their own allies. "Impossible," a council technician shouted. "Those drones use military-grade encryption. It would take days to break that code." "We did not break it," Yoo-jin explained calmly, listening to the council's communications through her station. "We just added noise to their communication. Their own security protocols did the rest. When they could not verify if other drones were friendly or hostile, they defaulted to treating them as threats." In the council chamber, Vekthar's crystalline form flickered rapidly. "That should not work. The drones have identity verification systems." "They do," Hyun-woo confirmed from his console. "But those systems rely on constant communication. Ensign Yoo-jin is not jamming the signals. She is corrupting them at random intervals. The drones cannot maintain verification, so they assume the worst." "That is," one council member struggled to find words. "That is remarkably clever. And remarkably ruthless." The battle continued, but now it was not really a battle anymore. It was a slaughter. The drones were destroying each other faster than the human ships could target them. Within 5 minutes, half of the remaining enemy fleet was gone, killed by friendly fire. Lieutenant Hae-won monitored damage reports from all human vessels. She was the fleet's chief medical and damage control officer, responsible for tracking the status of every ship and crew member. "Sir, UNSS Defiant reports minor damage to forward shields," she reported to Commander Jamin. "No casualties. UNSS Vigilant has overheated weapon system on port side. They are cycling down for emergency cooling. All other ships report green status. Minor damage only," one of the council observers said. "They have been fighting for over 20 minutes against overwhelming numbers. How is this possible?" "Because they are not fighting the way you expect," Ji-won said. She'd been watching the battle with intense focus, proud of her fellow humans but not surprised by their performance. Council doctrine emphasizes defensive formations and attrition warfare. Human doctrine emphasizes aggressive maneuver and overwhelming firepower. We hit hard and fast before the enemy can respond effectively. But your crews, another council member said. They are operating at a pace that should be impossible. How many stimulants are they using? Admiral Tae-hyun actually laughed at that. No stimulants. This is normal human combat readiness. We have faster reflexes and higher stress tolerance than most species. It is biology, not drugs. On the Defiant, Captain So-hyun was proving that point. Her ship dove through a formation of 6 drones, weapons blazing. The drones tried to track her, but she was constantly changing direction, never staying on one course long enough for them to get a solid lock. Target right, fire, she commanded. Rolling left, fire. Pitch up, fire! Her crew executed each command instantly, no hesitation, no delay. The weapons officer fired the moment targets were in range. The helmsman moved the ship before the captain finished speaking. They operated as a single entity, anticipating each other's actions. One of the drones exploded. Then another. The remaining 4 scattered, trying to escape. Pursue, So-hyun ordered. Do not let them reach the colony. The Defiant accelerated, its engines pushing past recommended limits. Dong-hyun watched his instruments and made real-time adjustments to keep everything running. He was not following any manual or procedure. He was simply doing what needed to be done. Captain, if we maintain this acceleration, we will exceed safe engine temperature, he reported. Will the engines explode? So-hyun asked. No, but they will need extensive repairs afterward. Then maintain acceleration. We can fix the engines after the battle. This was a very human way of thinking. The engines were tools. Tools could be repaired or replaced. What mattered was completing the mission. The council species thought differently. They carefully maintained their equipment, never pushing past recommended limits, always prioritizing the preservation of resources. Humans broke things and then fixed them. It was inefficient in peacetime but devastatingly effective in war. The drones that So-hyun was chasing tried to dodge. They used evasive patterns that had been programmed by council military experts, patterns designed to defeat standard pursuit tactics. But So-hyun was not using standard tactics. She was flying by instinct, making decisions faster than any computer could process them. She cut inside the drone's turn, anticipating their movement before they made it. Her weapons officer fired a spread of shots, not aiming at where the drones were, but where they were going to be. 3 drones died in rapid succession. The last one tried to dive toward the planet's atmosphere, perhaps hoping to escape in the interference. Not today, So-hyun muttered. Fire all forward weapons. The council members were still processing what they had witnessed when the communication systems activated again. This time, the transmission came from the colony world itself. This is Governor Chen of New Seoul Colony, a woman's voice said. She appeared on one of the viewing screens, standing in what looked like an emergency command center. Behind her, people were celebrating, hugging each other, some crying with relief. I want to thank the human fleet for their protection. We detected the incoming attack 45 minutes ago and activated our evacuation protocols. But thanks to your ships, we did not need to flee. You saved our homes. Ji-won bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement. Governor Chen, please confirm status of all civilians. The council requires verification that no non-combatants were harmed. All 50,000 residents are accounted for and safe, Governor Chen replied. 0 casualties. 0 injuries beyond some sprained ankles from people running to shelters too fast. She smiled. Tell the council that humanity knows how to protect its people. The transmission ended. Ji-won turned to face Vekthar and the other council members. The primary objective of the test was to protect the colony. That objective has been achieved with no civilian casualties. The secondary objective was to demonstrate tactical competence. I believe we have done that as well. Demonstrated? One council member repeated, his voice showing something that the translator identified as bewilderment. Captain Ji-won, your forces just achieved something that should have been impossible. The enemy had numerical superiority of 8-1. Standard tactical mathematics predicted 70% losses for your fleet, with only a 40% chance of mission success. Instead, you achieved total victory with 0 losses. This is not just competent. This is extraordinary, another council member spoke up. I have been a military observer for 200 years. I have evaluated 63 different species applying for council membership. Not one of them has ever achieved such a lopsided victory ratio. Host species would have lost half their fleet just in that first engagement. Then perhaps, Admiral Tae-hyun said quietly, Your models for predicting combat effectiveness need to account for human factors that do not fit traditional mathematical analysis. What factors? Vekthar asked. What did your forces do that our models did not predict? Tae-hyun thought for a moment before answering. Council tactics emphasize following established doctrine. Humans emphasize adaptability. Your ships operate according to their training and wait for orders from command. Our ships operate on individual initiative within the framework of overall objectives. On the main viewing screen, footage from the battle continued to play. The council technicians had compiled highlights, showing the engagement from multiple angles. One segment showed a moment that had happened aboard the UNSS Defiant during the height of the battle. Captain So-hyun's executive officer had been wounded when the ship took a glancing hit. It was not a serious injury, but it removed him from his station at a critical moment. Without waiting for orders, Corporal Ji-ho had left his position at the weapons station and taken over the executive officer's duties while simultaneously continuing to coordinate weapons fire. Pause there, a council military observer said. The footage froze. That crew member, the one who took over multiple positions. What rank is he? Corporal Ji-ho, Minna reported, checking her personnel files. He is a weapons specialist, 3rd class. That is a junior enlisted rank. And he assumed executive officer duties without authorization? He assumed those duties because they needed to be done, Ji-won explained. In the human military, we train every crew member to understand the overall mission objectives. When something needs doing, the nearest qualified person does it. They do not wait for permission. But the chain of command, the observer protested. What if his actions had conflicted with the captain's orders? They did not conflict. Captain So-hyun's voice came through the communication system. She had been listening to the council discussion from her ship. Corporal Ji-ho understood what needed to be done and did it. That is what we train our people to do. Initiative is not a flaw in our system. It is a feature. The footage continued playing. Another segment showed the medical bay of the Indomitable during the battle. Medic Yoonji was visible, moving between patients with incredible speed. But she was not just treating injuries. She was also directing repair teams, coordinating resource distribution and monitoring ship systems. That medic, a council member noted, she is performing at least 4 different jobs simultaneously. Medic Yoonji is cross-trained in multiple disciplines, Haiwan explained. All human crew members are. We cannot predict what will be needed in combat, so we prepare our people to do many things. During battle, everyone contributes however they can. That should not be possible, the council member insisted. The cognitive load of managing multiple complex tasks simultaneously should overwhelm most biological brains. How do your people do this? Practice, Admiral Tae-hyun said simply. And necessity. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on our homeworld. We learned to track prey over long distances while simultaneously watching for predators, navigating terrain, coordinating with our hunting party, and planning our approach. Multitasking is built into our biology. More footage played. This segment showed engineer Dong-hyun in the Defiance engine room. The camera caught him during a critical moment when one of the cooling systems had failed. Instead of reporting the problem and waiting for instructions, he had grabbed tools and started making repairs while the ship was still in combat. He used parts from the water recycling system to fix the weapon's cooling. A council engineer observed. That is completely improvised. Those parts were not designed to interface with weapon systems. They are now. Dong-hyun's voice came through the communication link. He sounded tired but pleased. The cooling system needed fluid regulation. The water recycling had fluid regulation components. Basic engineering principles are universal. I adapted what was available to solve the immediate problem. But you did not follow any repair manual or approved procedure, the council engineer said. There was no manual for this situation, Dong-hyun replied. Manuals cover anticipated problems. When you encounter an unanticipated problem, you improvise. The council members exchanged looks that the humans could not interpret. Were they impressed? Disturbed? Frightened? The translators could not convey the nuances of their emotional states. Another video segment showed technician Bora aboard a support vessel. During the battle, her ship's primary weapons had been disabled by a lucky hit from a drone. Instead of retreating, she had improvised a weapon using the ship's industrial mining laser, normally used for asteroid resource extraction. The makeshift weapon had destroyed 2 drones before the primary systems came back online. She weaponized a mining tool, a council observer said flatly, in the middle of combat, without authorization or engineering support. The enemy was shooting at us, Bora explained through the communication link. I had a high-powered laser. The logic was simple. But the safety protocols, the power requirements, the targeting systems. I bypassed the safety protocols, routed power from non-essential systems and aimed manually, Bora said. It was not elegant, but it worked. That is what matters in combat. Jiwon noticed that several council members seemed profoundly uncomfortable. She understood why. Council species had thousands of years of civilization. They had refined their technologies and procedures to high precision. Everything had rules, protocols, approved methods. Humans were different. Humans looked at rules as suggestions. They looked at established procedures as starting points. When the situation demanded it, they would ignore every rule and do whatever worked. This made humans unpredictable. And unpredictability was something that the orderly civilizations of the Council found deeply unsettling. The final video segment showed Navigator Da-Yun aboard the Indomitable. During the battle, Commander Jae-min had ordered a pursuit course through an asteroid field. The ship's computer had calculated the navigation as impossible, projecting a 97% chance of collision. Da-Yun had ignored the computer and plotted the course manually, threading the massive warship through gaps that the mathematical models said were too small. The ship had not touched a single asteroid. How did she do that? The Council navigator asked. The computer said it was impossible. The mathematical models were clear. I did not think about mathematics, Da-Yun explained. I looked at the asteroids, visualized the path, and flew it. Humans are very good at spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. Sometimes intuition is faster and more accurate than calculation. Intuition. The Council navigator sounded scandalized. You navigated a capital ship through a hazard field using intuition? Yes, Da-Yun said simply. And we did not crash. So my intuition was correct. The Council chamber fell silent again. The footage had ended. The battle was over. The evidence was complete. Now came the difficult part, understanding what it all meant. Vekthar floated to the center of the chamber, his crystalline form pulsing slowly. I have been an evaluator for 300 years, he said. I have seen many species, many tactics, many approaches to warfare, but I have never seen anything like this. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Jiwon asked. I do not know, Vekthar admitted. Your species. The human delegation waited in a comfortable room overlooking the council chamber. Through transparent walls, they could see the council members below engaged in intense discussion. The room was designed to be calming, with soft lighting and furniture adapted for various species body types. But no amount of careful design could ease the tension. How long do these deliberations usually take? Lieutenant Minna asked. She had accessed the council's historical records during the wait. Anywhere from 2 hours to 2 weeks, Hyun-woo replied, reading from his own datapad. The record is 18 days for a species called the Methrin. They eventually were rejected for membership. 18 days? Minna looked worried. What if we have to wait that long? Admiral Tae-hyun shook his head. We will not wait that long. We scared them. They will make a fast decision one way or another. Fear makes people act quickly. Captain Jiwon stood by the transparent wall watching the council. She could not hear what they were saying, but body language transcended species. Some council members were agitated, making large gestures. Others sat very still, which in many species indicated deep concern. A few were actively arguing, judging by the rapid back and forth of communication. I think we broke their evaluation models, Jiwon said quietly. Good, Tae-hyun replied. Models should be broken when they no longer match reality. The Council has been using the same military assessment procedures for thousands of years. They needed to see that not all species fit their expectations. Below in the chamber, the debate continued. The humans could not hear the words, but they would have been fascinating to listen to. They are too dangerous, one council member was arguing. Did you see how they fight? No respect for established doctrine, no restraint, just overwhelming aggression. What happens if they decide to turn that aggression against the council? They requested membership, another council member countered. If they wanted conflict with us, they would not have asked to join. They would have simply attacked. Unless this is a trick, a third suggested. A way to get close to us before revealing hostile intentions. Vekthar's crystalline form pulsed with irritation. Council members, please. We are allowing fear to guide us into paranoid speculation. Let us focus on facts. Fact 1. Humanity requested membership and submitted to our evaluation process. Fact 2. They succeeded in the evaluation far beyond any previous species. Fact 3. They demonstrated restraint by protecting civilians and even recovering disabled enemy drones instead of destroying them completely. Recovering the drones, someone asked. I did not see that in the reports. Check the post-battle summary, Vekthar said. Human ships recovered 17 disabled but intact enemy drones after the battle ended. They could have destroyed them. Instead, they preserved them for analysis. That shows strategic thinking and, more importantly, shows they understand the value of intelligence gathering over simple destruction. A military observer stood up. I want to address the tactical concerns. Yes, human methods are unconventional. Yes, they do not follow our doctrine, but perhaps that is exactly what we need. The Council has faced increasing threats in recent decades from forces that also do not follow our established patterns. We have struggled against these threats precisely because our doctrine assumes rational actors following predictable patterns. Humans do not follow predictable patterns. That makes them ideal for countering enemies who also defy prediction. You want to weaponize their unpredictability? Someone asked. I want to learn from it, the observer corrected. Humanity has something that most Council species lost millennia ago. They retain the adaptability and aggression that evolution instilled in them. They have not been civilized into rigidity. That makes them valuable allies and dangerous enemies. I would prefer they be the former. Another council member spoke up, one who had been silent until now. I have been reviewing Earth's history. It is a violent history. Wars, genocides, atrocities. Can we trust a species with such a brutal past? Admiral Tae-hyun had been monitoring the council discussion through Hyunwoo's translation system. He requested permission to address the council, which Vekthar granted. Council members, Tae-hyun began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. You are correct that humanity has a violent history. We do not hide this. We are ashamed of many things our species has done. But that history also taught us important lessons. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We learned that violence without purpose is wasteful. We learned that strength must be tempered with wisdom. We learned that survival requires cooperation as much as competition. Every war we fought taught us the costs of conflict. Every atrocity we committed haunts our collective memory. We carry our history with us not as a source of pride, but as a reminder of what we must never become again. Pretty words, a skeptical council member said. But words are easy. Actions reveal truth. Then judge us by our actions, Ji-won said, stepping forward. We were given a test designed to be nearly impossible. We could have achieved victory through ruthless tactics, ignoring civilian safety to focus on destroying the enemy. Instead, our first priority was protecting the colony. 0 civilian casualties. That was not luck. That was choice. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. We could have destroyed the disabled drones after the battle. Instead, we recovered them carefully, preserving them for study. We could have exceeded the test parameters and demonstrated our ability to project force against multiple targets. Instead, we focused only on the assigned objective. Every action we took showed restraint within the context of necessary violence. Necessary violence, another council member repeated. That phrase troubles me. You speak of violence as if it were a tool to be used when needed. It is a tool, Ji-won replied bluntly. A terrible tool that should only be used as a last resort, but a tool nonetheless. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. You know this. That is why you have military forces. That is why you conduct these evaluations. You need to know if a species can defend itself and its allies when violence becomes necessary. But your enthusiasm for it, the council member protested. Not enthusiasm, Tae-hyun corrected. Competence. We are good at warfare because we had to become good at it to survive. But being good at something does not mean we enjoy it. A surgeon can be excellent at cutting flesh without taking pleasure in causing pain. Humanity views warfare the same way. We do it well because the alternative is defeat. But we do not celebrate violence. We celebrate survival. The council chamber fell quiet for a moment. Then one of the eldest council members spoke. She was a being that looked like a tree made of silver metal, ancient beyond human comprehension. I have lived for 12,000 years, she said, her voice like wind through leaves. I have seen hundreds of species rise to spacefaring status. Most fall into two categories. Some are too peaceful, unable to defend themselves when threatened. They require constant protection from the Council. Others are too aggressive, viewing everything as a potential target. They must be contained or expelled. She paused, her metallic branches rustling. Humanity appears to be neither. Or perhaps both. You have the capacity for great violence, but also the wisdom to restrain it. You are aggressive when needed, but cooperative when possible. This balance is rare, perhaps unique. So you support their membership? Vekthar asked. I support further observation, the Ancient One replied. But yes, I lean toward acceptance. The galaxy needs species that can fight but choose not to. We have too many who cannot fight and too many who always fight. The middle path is valuable. Another vote was called for preliminary opinions. The results were mixed but leaning positive. 17 council members favored accepting humanity. 9 opposed. 6 wanted more time for evaluation. Vekthar pulsed thoughtfully. We are close to a decision, but there remains one critical question that must be addressed. If we accept humanity, what restrictions should we place on them? Restrictions? G1 asked from the observation area. Standard practice, Vekthar explained. New member species typically receive limitations on military expansion, weapon development, and territorial claims until they have proven their stability over time. I see, G1 said carefully. And how long do these restrictions typically last? Between 50 and 200 years, Vekthar replied. A reasonable period for a species to demonstrate consistent behavior. G1 looked at Taehyun. The Admiral nodded slightly. They had discussed this possibility during their journey. Council, G1 said formally. Humanity respectfully declines membership if it comes with such restrictions. The chamber erupted in shocked responses. Council members spoke over each other, their translators struggling to keep up with the volume of voices. You decline? Vekthar's lights flashed rapidly. You came all this way, performed the evaluation, demonstrated your capabilities, and now you decline membership? We decline restricted membership, G1 clarified. Humanity does not seek to be a protected client state or a probationary member. We seek full partnership with equal rights and equal responsibilities. If the Council cannot offer that, then we will remain independent and develop our own path forward. That is foolish. A Council member objected. Without Council,